Good evening. Good evening, good evening. To the very catchily named Capgemini Applied Innovation Exchange. Is everybody here for the right event and to talk about some tech this evening? Quick show of hands if you're here with an interest in tech this evening and to meet some rugby legends as well. Most of you, good. Any of you in completely the wrong place at completely the wrong time and would like to bravely leave at this point? No, I think we're all right. Firstly, a very warm welcome to you on a lovely summer's evening. Great to see so many of you here. We have got a lot to get through this evening, and hopefully it's going to be not only very interesting, but also relatively entertaining as well. We've got some very special guests alongside. One of them sadly has only got 1 foot. Will you just quickly stand up? James Haskell, Rachael Burford, and Amy Wilson-Hardy. Give a round of applause for our star guests this evening. England internationals galore. Lovely to see you all. Thank you very much indeed for coming to you tonight. We've obviously, as I said, got a lot to get through. It's my absolute honour this evening and a career high to be taking you through Blue Steel. We do courses in Blue Steel for anyone who needs them a little later on. For those who don't know, my name is Alex Payne and I've been a sports broadcaster. Is this working? I don't know. Maybe I'm just shouting. It is working. A sports broadcaster at Sky for the last 10 or 15 years or so. Most people still think I'm on work experience, but we're sort of blagging it for as long as we can. As I said, a career high tonight to be taking you through health and safety. Any of you who'd like to know where the loos are, they're back out in the corridor next to the lifts as we arrived. We don't have any fire alarms planned, but if one goes off, I think I'm right in saying we're heading down the tunnel on our right. Is that right? Can someone nod knowingly? Yes, thumbs up from James at the back. We recycle here tonight as well, doing our bit for the planet, so put the right glasses in the right bins. And can I make sure everyone's phones are set to silent as well? That would be very kind. We have got social media going on tonight as well. We're live on YouTube. Good evening to everyone on YouTube. We are streaming live this evening as well. And if you would like to get into the social media tonight, it's at Capgemini UK and at Capgemini AIE with the hashtag What's Now London. There is a prize for anyone who produces more social media this evening than James Haskell. We're not quite sure what that is, but Hask is already up and running. My job to quickly take you through the welcome and introduction. Hello and welcome, we've done that bit. We're then going to have, obviously, an introduction from Paul, who's going to come and say a few words in a moment. We've got a really interesting talk with the founder of Spork. We've got trade shows that are going to take place a little bit later on as well. Then we're going to have a chat with James and Rachael, and then we'll have a panel discussion where you can put your questions to James, Rachael, Ben, Rebecca Hopkins, who's going to join us, and Rob Vickerman as well. So lots to get through. We'll try and make it short and sharp and snappy. Do get involved wherever you like, as I said, in terms of the social media. Line up some good questions for a little bit later on. But without further ado, could I hand over to Paul Scales, the Senior Vice President at Capgemini. Paul, that's for you. A warm round of applause for Paul. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Can you hear me at the back? Give me a nod. Okay. Thank you, Alex. And welcome, everybody. I recognise some people who were here last year when we launched around our sponsorship of the Rugby 7 series, and it's great to see. I think we've at least doubled that audience, so that's fantastic. So something's working. The other thing I just wanted to do, building on Alex as a thank you, is Bailey. Where are you? Where's Bailey? Bailey at the back. Thank you so much for bringing the series trophy. We're under strict instructions we can look but not touch. And have photos later, but thank you very much for bringing that. Just puts the icing on the cake of the event this evening. So my job this evening is to welcome you all, talk a little bit about Capgemini, and then tee up the fun for the rest of the interest for the rest of the evening. So for those of you who don't know, Capgemini is a large global technology business. About 220,000 people around the world, 16 billion plus revenue. We work with most of the major corporates, taking them from design and concept around technology all the way through build into running systems for them. We're in nearly every major country in the world and most of the markets as well. And with that in mind, one of the challenges that we always have, and we still do have, from our clients, some of whom I know are in the room, is Capgemini bring us some innovation, show innovation in terms of what you do, which I'm proud to say we do, and you'll see some great examples of that tonight. But we were also thinking about a way that we could really showcase innovation. because a lot of industries, people can get very excited about their own particular industry. But how do we find something that's global and fun and can start to show how we are providing value as an innovation partner? And I can't think of anything better than just over 18 months ago, we announced that we were coming on to be the innovation sponsor around the HSBC World Rugby 7 Series. It's given us a platform around the world in a sport that Capgemini loves. We have a long, rich heritage of rugby, particularly in France, sponsoring a couple of rugby clubs in the 2007 Rugby World Cup. And we said about 18 months ago, it's now time to go global with our message. What sport should we do that with? Well, it's got to be rugby. Had to be rugby. It's so rich in our heritage. And as I say, the sevens for us very much reflects a sport that is looking to innovate. It's very much at the forefront of rugby in terms of the way that it innovates. And we found an ideal partnership in World Rugby in order to do that as well. So I'm very proud of the fact that I spent most of last year helping to set up the rugby sponsorship, and also proud of my colleagues who've picked it up and taken it even better this year. So thank you to them for doing that. It's also about fun, I mentioned as well. So the other objective of our sponsorship is to get the Capgemini brand known amongst the general public, as well as more potential clients. So we've spent a lot of time engaging around events with fun activities, and those of you who may be coming to London in a couple of weeks for the series will see Spadey and the ball, and be able to play some interactive kicking games, see how many goals you can score on the VR application as well. So this is all about getting Capgemini's name out there in the marketplace as well, as is this event this evening. So we run a series of events around the world. You are in our ASE, which stands for Accelerated Solutions Environment, and just across the corridor is our AIE, sorry about the acronyms, our Applied Innovation Exchange. This is where we bring our clients in to tackle the big, hairy challenges or opportunities that they have as a business. And every so often we also host events around this. We've hosted events around the future of work, for example. But because it's the sevens in a couple of weeks, this is all about sport and tech. So I'm really pleased that we're going to be doing that this evening. Just to bring to life a little bit in terms of our journey and the Capgemini brand around innovation, I just want to share with you a quick video, and then I promise I'll close and we'll move on to see some of the interesting things that we've done over the last year around our innovation journey. haven't been to a sevens tournament, I'd suggest you try and get along to London. They're fab events. So, right, without further ado, there is a theme running through this evening about our global innovation partner status and the journey we've been on with various stakeholders, including World Rugby, including our other sponsor partners, to bring innovation and new ideas, whether it's improving fan experience, whether it's improving data and analytics for the fans or the commentators. And you'll see a theme coming as you share with us this evening around some of the trade shows where people will be showing you some of the interesting things that they've developed. But the core theme that we've applied is the same discipline that we apply whoever we work with, whatever corporate we work with, we've applied the same discipline to working with World Rugby and On This Sport to come out with some fan experience examples around match predictors, AI, etc. And that's the key for us, is that we are bringing our discipline around innovation to this sport, and I think it really is paying off in spades. So, without further ado, who I want to introduce you, is Johan, who has been leading our AIE, our Applied Innovation Exchange experience, to talk to you about a particular AI development that we've made this year with World Rugby. Johan?
Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here on behalf of the AIE and welcome you to this What's in London event. Can I just ask, who's been to a What's in London event before? Show of hands? A few guys out there. That's great. So welcome back. And for those of you it's the first time, welcome. We hope to see you at more of these. We run them every quarter, so please come along in the future as well. I'm here to talk about two things today. Firstly, what is the AIE? Just to give you a bit more background. And secondly, this great project we've been working on over the last 4 weeks to bring rugby to life with new technologies. So firstly, who is the AIE? Well, we're not only the front door of innovation for Capgemini, we're also a group of people. We're really excited. It's a group of developers, UX designers, consultants that share one common thing. We're really excited about innovation. Innovation really is what brings us to life every morning in solving real business challenges for our clients. So what do? So we work with our clients to identify their business challenges. We take the ones that might be at the bottom of the drawer, gathering dust, that might have been too hard or forgotten, but had some real interest and could make a real difference to their business. So we take that, we look at it through 3 lenses. So first of all, emerging technology. Secondly, emerging business model. And lastly, emerging products and services that we might bring to life. So how do we do this? Well, we start with creating an immersive experience. We take all of Capgemini, as Paul mentioned, 220,000 people globally. We take the best from everything. We also work with a startup ecosystem. We have a great startup ecosystem around the world, which we pull on. And also some of our big partners. Just to mention a few, IBM, AWS, Microsoft, or just a few out there who we work with to create these really nice immersive experience to unpack the problem. We then want to walk the shoes of the people that have an issue. So we will send our UX designers and our consultants out in the field, even if that means walking through a field of basically cow dung to get to a sewage plant at 5 a.m. in the morning to check out how people work. We then take that back and we really break the problem down. We create a number of hypotheses and experiments we want to run to test what can be done to solve this business challenge. So that's when we hand it over to a great team of developers and designers to go about it in a few different ways. We can quite quickly, in 4 to 8 weeks, create something to test that challenge. So that can be creating a clickable prototype. It can even be starting a business, which we've done before, or, as a case with World Rugby, create a technical challenge and build something that everyone can see how new technology can really change the challenge we have. So, what have we been doing with World Rugby and rugby importantly? How many of you know, how many of you have seen video analytics being used in other sports, such as tennis, football? A few of you? Great. Well, video analytics is a growing topic. I think many of you will know it's used in construction, manufacturing lines. Security is a growing area, and a lot of sports as well. So tennis is a great example, but it's often done as very complex challenges. So what we set out to do is to explore how video analytics can be used to recognize key moments in rugby sevens games, to provide new insights for commentators and thereby increase fan experience. So make it better for all of you, really. So you can find out the new things that are going on, how quickly someone running, how many tries have been scored, what's the interesting facts about that player. So we put together a team, quite a small team, that have been working for 4 weeks, as I said, to build this. But a really team who's really excited about rugby and bringing this to life and trialing new things. So what did we do? Well, we took the broadcast footage. So you can see it here. As I said before, in tennis, they often put new cameras out. You see it in hockey as well. There's new cameras. There's a lot of capital investment to put new cameras, new infrastructure in place. We didn't want to do that. We want to see what can we do with what's there today. So this is the broadcast feed that you'll see online and at home on your TVs, and we want to see what insights can we provide on that. So working with our data analyst team, we went through and we started recognizing key events, such as tackles, tries, and rucks, for example. And we did this by going through and tagging over 30,000 images to build up a library which we can cross-reference against. That model's then evolved to include more logic, but ultimately we should be able to create information that's usable and insightful, because that's what we want to do, really. We want to create more information for people. There's also good other benefits in here, which some of your businesses and why we invest in things like this is brand awareness. So we can start recognizing how many logos, Capgemini one importantly, I think is out there. So we can show how much return on investment are we getting, what's your brand value, and you can even start charging people in different business models around this as well. So we took all this information, did some great work for the data scientists, and in just 4 weeks we did all this, I should say as well, and it's turning out really well, just like the spotters do today. And we brought this to life. So what we did is we created a dashboard, so working with commentators and interviewing them, found out what do they want. How can we combine what they want, the information they're missing, with this new insights? So this is an example of one dashboard. There's a few different views of this. But as you can see, the things you saw in the video, counting the different rucks, the tries and everything, is counted on the bottom. That is, you can click on it. It'll automatically snip the clip into those minutes, so you can see it. It tells you who it is. And we're also looking more aspirational. Can we look at how long that player's been playing? How is their tiredness influencing this? And how can we expect them to perform going further on in the game? There we go. So we did this for a few people. I mentioned commentators. That's one fan group we had in mind. But there's a lot of other people interested in that. I think some of your super fans out here in the crowd tonight can make good use of this. But other also people, you know, companies, as I mentioned, but also the spotters. So today, if you go to a rugby game, there's actually people that sit around the field, count as things happen, type it into a computer, and that creates a big Excel document, basically. With this, that's no longer needed. So their skills can be used for something better. They can start looking at some of the more difficult things that they might not have been able to do before, and we can start upskilling and bringing even more value to it. I said there's 4 main things we kind of took out of this. So automatically being able to recognize key events, as you can see. Qualify the sponsor engagement. Automatically clip things and speed up the process. So now it takes a few hours for people to cut things together. We can do this in real time, more or less. And also surface insights in new ways to make it more exciting for people and bring that fan experience up and fan engagement really importantly. So what I would welcome you all to do is come back. We have a trade show set up at the back and see more about it. I also want to ask the AIE team to stand up for a second in case any of you guys want to come and talk to us about the AIE. Can you guys wave? There you are. They're a very tired bunch. I think they've had too much to drink already. Yeah, they're working 4 weeks non-stop. But as I said, we're really keen to speak to you all about what we've done in rugby, but also in the AIE. So please come and grab us. They're all wearing lanyards, so come and find us. But thank you very much, all. Enjoy your evening, and I hope to see you in the future as well. And I'm going to hand over to Ben and Alex.
Thank you, Johan. That was fantastic. We're back on and we're up and running. So obviously that's one of the shows that we've got where you can go and have a bit of a chat and explore a little bit more about it a bit later on. First, we'll have a warm round of applause for Ben Reynolds, who is the co-founder and CEO of Spalk, which is a fascinating piece of kit. Do you just want to explain to everyone first and foremost what it is that you're doing at Spork?
Yeah, sure. I'll address the elephant in the room first. Do we have any other Kiwis? Any other Kiwis in the room? Firstly, greatest rugby country in the world. I think we can all agree on that. But secondarily, it's great to see there's at least one other New Zealander in the house. So, Spork, what do? We call ourselves a virtual commentary studio. So if you think about the way that sports commentary is traditionally produced by broadcasters, They fly folks like Alex to luxurious locations around the world, park them up in fancy hotels, which cost £300 a night, and then they rock up to the stadium and they commentate the game. They have a bunch of on-site producers who do all the mixing, produce the content, and they send it out for broadcast. What we've said is, let's not send Alex on a luxurious plane trip around the world.
I already dislike what it is that you're doing.
Let's park him up behind a laptop, use a bunch of software to synchronize his audio, produce broadcast-grade commentary from the comfort of his basement or his apartment.
Really dislike it. Thank you, Ben. That was lovely. We'll leave it there. No, good, keep going.
So we through Capgemini have got to work really closely with World Rugby over the last year or so, and have been helping them produce multilingual commentary. All the English commentators are still on site, but they've been using us to produce Spanish, French, Mandarin, Hindi commentary on a variety of their events. And for World Rugby, it's obviously a huge way to, without flying multiple commentary teams all around the world, save an enormous amount of money on that. So that's Spork in a nutshell.
Tell us a little bit about the relationship between World Rugby, between Capgemini and yourselves. How's that come about, and how beneficial has it been to you?
Yeah, sure. So I was here about a year ago, I think, initially meeting with the AIE team here in Holborn, and they ran a competition with half a dozen startups who all came in to pitch their wares to World Rugby. And World Rugby, I think, identified us as an interesting opportunity for them to grow their audience, particularly in growth markets like China and India and Latin America. And so they brought us in and said, hey, we want to pilot you on the Rugby Sevens this year, and we've seen some fantastic numbers and some fantastic results that they've been able to grow their audience in all of these countries around the world.
Interesting. So you've obviously very quickly said that you're from New Zealand. You're living in New York right now. Is that right? You're here in London
Correct.
this week. It begs the question why you can't be doing all this from your basement. Why you're jetting around the world, staying in nice hotels like the rest of us used to. But just tell us a little bit about the challenges that you've had in terms of, internationally, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure, you'll find it on a startup budget. I'm typically in the lowest of the low. I think I flew over here on Norwegian with about 2 inches of leg room or something like that, so it was quite crap. But no, so I mean, New Zealand, for those of you who don't know, tiny country at the bottom of the world, and whenever you start a business down there, which we did 3 years ago with Spork, you have to think global from day one. There's 5 million people in New Zealand. You can't build a $1 billion business from that part of the world. You have to go overseas. And so from the get-go, we started piloting with a lot of customers and broadcasters, both in New Zealand and Australia, and promptly looked up to the rest of the world, particularly the US and Europe, as our primary markets. So for us, a launch customer for us was FIBA, the international governing body for basketball, who use us in over 2,000 games of basketball every season. FINA on the aquatics, the NBA in the US, all of these international clients who we know we have to get out of our home market to really go and service.
And it's really interesting when you mentioned the other rights holders that you're working with. Are you spotting trends amongst all of them, or are you seeing them approach it differently?
So it's really interesting. I think the difference with how some of them are pursuing more of a social broadcast versus some of them who are going for a direct to customer OTT, pay us $5 a month, and it's sort of the trade-off between, do we want to monetize a smaller audience or just get our content out there for more and more people to see? And so World Rugby has this interesting sort of hybrid model where they've got their World Rugby TV product, but they're also broadcasting in select markets on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and collecting an enormous audience from what you would call smaller emerging rugby nations, but they're viewed it as a way to grow the game, and a way for them to just grow audience in some of these smaller markets. And then with the Skies and the ESPNs of the world, they obviously the dollar signs sort of click over in the eyes, and they sell the rights very gladly to them.
Because you have a database of 2,000 commentators, is that right? And I imagine you're getting more and more applications as well. I just wonder whether you've got any hints and tips for people coming. Well, gladly receive them myself, coming up in the industry, and also potentially, where else that might lead in terms of what you're doing. No need for a passport would be the first bit of advice, obviously, for anyone coming into the industry. But what else would you advise them?
So I had this fantastic email the other day from one of our commentators, Brad, in Taiwan. So he commentates with Star Sports, flies all over Asia all the time, and he sent me a picture, and it was him commentating some rugby last November with his newly born baby daughter lying on his chest as he commentated from his laptop at home, and he emailed me to say, one, thank you so much. I'm able to spend time with my family, earn an income. My wife's able to go out and spend time with her friends, and the best thing for him is he's not even leaving the house. So that's something that really excites me, is just some of the career opportunities we're developing for these commentators, and the chance we're giving them to, I guess, build their career from the comfort of their homes. In terms of that marketplace, yeah, like I say, we've got a little over 2,000 commentators. A lot of them are, distributed around the globe, predominantly English speaking, but we cover a little over 50 languages. So we're really proud of our diversity in our lineup, and we're really trying to strengthen that as we move forward.
And what would you like to get from today? How can the audience in here help you?
Yeah, sure. So I'm doing a live demo down the back after this, as well as showing some examples of us with World Rugby. Big thing for us this year is just clients. So if you are a broadcaster, if you're a sports federation, if you know a national federation, we want to talk to them because we know we can 4x their audience and save them a ton of money.
Brilliant. Crushing the dreams of commentators, but opening up a whole new world to the digital era. Ben, thank you very much indeed. And obviously people can find you a little bit later on. Ben, thank you. I'll still take 6 weeks in New Zealand following Haskell on the Lions tour. It's certainly better than watching it in my basement. For now, anyway. Rob, I didn't introduce you at the start. Will you stand up? We've got the ex-England Sevens captain, Mr. Rob Vickerman here. I'm sure it's very familiar to a number of you in the room, having done a lot of work with Capgemini. But do you want to come up and say a few words about your workshop? Rob Vickerman, ladies and gentlemen, come and have a word.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Well, after just hearing what Ben had to say there, I think I'm now looking for a new career. So very apt to here, giving a workshop round the corner with my concept of Workathlete. So as well as being the ex-England Sevens captain, I'm now a broadcaster, travel around the world in those hotels, as mentioned by Ben, which is a real pleasure of a job. But also, along with that, I've built up a bit of a profile within the work inspector to look at Workathlete and really transition what many people think that sports does well, and then try and put a bit of a business spin onto it in terms of that performance sphere. So many people in this room, I imagine, may well come along because of the headline of James Haskell and what he can give us insight around his game, as well as we've got Amy and Rachael as well to talk about the professional side of the game. Yet very many people in this room are probably not applying many of the traits that they possess to get them in the position of being a professional sports person. So it really is interesting to try and translate those messages from the world of business with a bit of a sporting background, which will be around the corner, as well as the other two very interesting sessions that will be on just further around as well. So thank you very much for coming along. I look forward to hopefully speaking to many more of you.
What's that? Fantastic. So Rob obviously is going to be at the back. This is a little map that we have for you here. So we are here right now, and we've got 4 workshops for you to go. We're going to sort of break out for about half an hour, I think I'm right saying. So you've got the opportunity to choose 2. They're going to be 15 minutes each. We'll have a break in the middle, grab a drink as you pass, etc. I'm actually, as Ben is very kindly wiping out my broadcasting career, I actually have a tech business of my own called The Influence Room, which connects brands with influencers, essentially. A lot of sports people on our platform. So I'm going to hang fire here and tell you a little bit about what we're doing and the authenticity that we are delivering for brands and the opportunities that we are opening up for professional sports people who are perhaps moving through their glory days into the old glue factory like James. So we'll have a chat with him as well. Rob is going to be around the corner with Workathlete. We've obviously got Ben with Spalk, and we have got Johan with Capgemini. Am I right in saying we're going to break now? Is that right? Are you going to whack up the music? Everyone grab a drink as you go. If you'd like to stay and listen to the Influence Room, stay here. Otherwise, go and find Rob, go and find Ben, and go and find Johan. We're going to have one 15-minute seminar, then we'll whack up the music again, everyone mills around a bit, and then we'll have another 15-minute seminar, and then we will meet back here a little bit later on. Cue the music. Go for a wander, grab a drink. See you in a mo. Thank you. take about 5-10 minutes to tell you about what we're doing at the Influence Room, which is about 2 years old. It's a connection tool between brands and celebrities and influencers, and it's doing something quite unique in the market at the moment. I'm sure most of you will have heard about influencer marketing, and at that point most people switch off because it's getting a bit of a bad rap right now. We are doing something very, very different, and the reason it's relevant tonight is we are giving opportunities to a lot of former sports stars to connect with brands and talk to brands that they are interested in and they want to play a part in. The whole idea has actually come about from an actual learning. They always say best stories come about from an actual learning. I'm going to tell you a very sort of brief synopsis of where it came from. So the reason the sort of television angle of what I've been doing for the last 10 or 15 years or so is relevant is because, and I have no interest in being a celebrity or an influencer, but because I'm on television most weeks, I have been given quite a lot of products and brands and sent quite a lot of experience opportunities, most of which I'm fairly baffled by. So about 3 years ago, I was given a box with 500 quid's worth. Oh, they're having more fun than us. Can we just have a quick laugh to make sure we're having more fun? Ha 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 ha. Very good, well done, on cue. I was given this box with about 500 quid's worth of Star Wars merchandise in it. So there were books and games and DVDs and a whole host of sort of other bits and bobs. And in the top of the box was a little note, and they said, Alex, we hope you love all this. If you do, we'd love you to tweet about the fact that we are showing Star Wars on our movie channel weekend. So really cool product. Spent time, money and effort putting it together. Very clear what they want, which is a whole lot of social media exposure to drive eyeballs to the viewing on Saturday. I have absolutely no interest in Star Wars. And I am a good person, so I sent a tweet, and it got, I think, 13 likes, which isn't doing anyone any favours, really. But I was left with this sort of burning question, why have they come up with a really good idea? And you will be doing this in every brand and every role that you work in. Why have they come up with a really good idea? And they've then tried to find people to talk about it, and they are ultimately just chucking it at people willy-nilly in the hope that something comes of it. Why is there nowhere that the most successful movie franchise in history can go and say, look, we've got 100 boxes of really cool Star Wars merchandise. If any of you like Star Wars, we'd love to sort you out with something fun. We just love a bit of social media exposure if you're a Star Wars fan, because we're showing it on the weekend. The flip side of what we've built is that I don't, as I said, pretend to be a celebrity or an influencer, but because of the television angle, I have actually been invited to tell some quite fun stories over the last 10 years. So I've had the chance to play football at Wembley on telly, and I've played in a couple of celebrity poker tournaments. I've done a men's health fitness challenge. And I'd love to have said to a brand, actually, you know, I'm doing something really cool. I would love to borrow a pair of boots and a football kit. And if anything comes of it, I'll give you a bit of social media love and I'll wear your boots on telly. And actually for Adidas, who are trying to find people who are doing interesting things, chucking a pair of boots costs them absolutely nothing. It gives them really good exposure from someone who's doing something really interesting. So the problem you've got is that brands, and you'll know this extremely well, are doing a huge amount of outreach. They're either paying people a lot of money and not getting a lot back for it, or they are chucking product and getting nothing back for it at all. And influencers, there are a lot of very influential people out there who are telling some brilliant stories and would love to work with a brand on an advocacy basis, an authentic basis, without payment, just because it's a brand that they love, need, or want at that particular time. And we have built exactly that site. So instead of, as I said, Star Wars chucking boxes at people and nothing coming of it, they put up 100 boxes. They say, if you love Star Wars, we'd love to hear from you. And influential people who all apply to come on our site can message Star Wars when they see this on the browse wall and say, do you know, I love it. Send me a box and I'll Instagram it. Or my son loves Star Wars, send me a box. I'll do a really cool YouTube video of him unboxing it, and we'll create some content around us watching the films. Or maybe even I'm a radio DJ and I need 5 competition prizes for my show on Friday afternoon. Send me the boxes and I'll talk about you while I give them out as part of that competition. So as a brand, instead of running around going bananas, trying desperately to get your product into the hands of people you think might want it, you're able to sit back, get approached by pre-vetted people of influence who say, I love that, I'm really keen to be a part of it. You give it to them and they go bananas for it. You're not paying them, you're not controlling the message, you are giving it to someone who said, I really like it and I want to talk about it as a result. And as an influencer, if you're telling a really interesting story, so for example, we've got a guy who's just been to the North Pole, won the World Cup as a rugby player, went on a charity challenge. He had a big documentary team following him, and he came on the site and said, look, I've got this challenge I'm undertaking. I'm walking to the North Pole on behalf of this charity. I desperately need some help from an outdoor gear brand who will get me there and back without kind of losing my fingers and toes. At which point Berghaus say, what an amazing story. We'd love to give you all the kit you need. We'd love to feature in the documentary that you're creating. We'd love a bit of social media love. And actually when you get back, we'd also love you to come into our headquarters and talk to our board members and our senior management about the experience, about winning the World Cup, about how the kit worked for you. So we'd like television exposure, we'd like a bit of social media exposure, and we'd love some of your time to give us genuine feedback as to how you found that product. He gets £15,000 worth of kit, he plugs it into the stories he's telling, it saves his bacon, it gets him there and back, and he becomes a really big fan of the brand and goes back to that brand, to Berghaus, and says, you know, this has worked extremely well for me, here's what I've learned, here's the feedback, etc., etc. So it's a really powerful connection tool, essentially, and the reason it's relevant today is that it enables people. The definition of influence right now essentially means how many followers have you got on Instagram, and what's your engagement rate. That is what people consider an influencer to be. But if I was to say to any one of you in the room, who is the most influential person in your life? Very few of you, I imagine, would say XYZ, who I follow on Instagram. You talk about teachers, you talk about politicians, you talk about people you work with, people you aspired to be when you were younger. Influence is a far, far broader product than just a sort of social media sort of microcosm of it. And we are trying in the Influence Room to do exactly that, to broaden out what influential people can offer and to broaden out the way that they are able to connect with brands and what they can do for them. And as a really good example, the reason that James Haskell is here this evening, and he won't mind me saying, is that he's actually a member of the site. Capgemini came onto our platform and said, we've got a really cool tech event coming. If any of you are interested in tech, if any of you are interested in sport, we'd love to hear from you. At which point James says, you know, this is really interesting. Not only have I had a 25, 30-year career or whatever it's been, but actually I'm a DJ on the side, heavily into my social media. I'm really interested in tech, and I think there's a really good role that I can play for you here this evening. Capgemini pick up directly, they have a direct conversation, they speak on the phone, and here he is tonight, earning his corn as part of the event that we've put on. As far as a brand is concerned, a lot of you will, I presume, be familiar with the fact that the sort of the influencer landscape is taking a bit of a battering at the moment. It's sort of erupted very quickly, the whole sort of social media landscape, as we know. Suddenly brands wanted to play a space in the space. They started chucking a lot of money around, at which point the influencers think, well, if I can make money out of it, I need to boost my followers, therefore I'm going to buy fake followers. I'm going to sort of boycott authenticity, and I'm just going to try and get to brands in whichever way I can in order to earn some money out of it. As soon as people start talking about commercial activity on a social media channel, which ultimately you grow authentically and organically, as soon as you flip that into a commercial model, the audiences start to switch off. Why do you follow someone in the start point? Because they tell really authentic, interesting stories. As soon as they're just serving you ads and spawns the whole time, you begin to switch off. You're just becoming a sort of a channel which people are advertising through. So influencers in this day and age need increasingly to be talking about the things that they love and want to get to, whether it's going to a gig that they're passionate about or staying in a hotel that they need to be staying at because they're away on business or on travel, whatever it might be. And we give these influencers the opportunity essentially to see what brands are offering and say, I would love to play a part in that, and here's how I will tell your story. And I was sort of speaking about the broadening of influence. We've had some extraordinary examples where we connected a very, very famous actor who is pretty familiar to most of you in this room from Hollywood. We got a very young watch brand on the company. They came on and said, if any of you are doing anything interesting, we'd love to give you a watch. We'd love to see what you're doing. We'd love to appear on red carpets, whatever it is. And he sent them a really nice message just saying, hey, I love what you guys are about. You've got some really nice style. I am a huge watch collector. I just hope it goes really well for you. At which point they were like, Christ alive. And they messaged him back and said, do you know, if you love your watches, how about we do a bespoke watch together? And he messaged back 5 minutes later saying, do you know, I'd absolutely love to do that. I've always wanted to design a watch. I've got 50 watches of my own. I'd be really keen to see what a collaboration would look like. So he took in a few watches of his life, the one that his dad had given, etc. They created a whole load of YouTube content around him talking about his love of watches and why he wanted to do a bespoke watch. And that was the currency he traded in. He is an A-list Hollywood actor with absolutely no social media interest or appeal at all. Doesn't go on into any sort of digital space. But he is still very valuable in the room that we are in because it's about using his influence as a person to help that brand on the journey that they're on. We had another extraordinary example a couple of years ago with an England cricketer who was on a sun lounger in the West Indies, having played in the middle of the one-day series, floating through the opportunities and saw a swimming trunk company and said, Christ, I love your trunks. I'm out in the West Indies at the moment. I suppose you could send a pair out. And they were like, oh my God, we're a massive, massive cricket fan. I'd love to send you some. What would you like? So he said, well, I'd take a pair of those. And actually, I'm next to Joe Root, who'd love a pair of those. And we've got Johnny Bairstow, who thinks he'd quite like some of those. So the guy said, oh my God, this is unbelievable. I'll package them all up. And by the way, my dad is coming out this evening. He's a massive cricket fan. I'll get him to take them with him. He's coming to watch the one-day series. He can drop them at the hotel. And the cricketer wrote back and said, God, that sounds fantastic. Yeah, of course, we'll do loads of social when he gets here. By the way, does your dad want to come and sit in the players' area? We've got loads of spare tickets. And this guy was 75 years old or whatever, suddenly going out with a bag of swimming trunks for half the England cricket team and ended up sitting in the players' area at this one day. The kicker to the story, and where it begins to work really well, is that a week later, they're all jumping off a boat. One of them's got a selfie stick. They're all wearing the trunks, and it gets picked up by the Daily Mail. And suddenly, you know, the trunks that he sent out a week earlier are a big story in the Daily Mail online, and they're getting fantastic exposure. It's content they can then use on their own channels. They've got 3 fans of the brand in an international arena, and the dad is the happiest man on planet Earth. So what we're trying to do, as I say, is very, very different to the model at the moment, which is brands essentially paying people to promote that brand message. And there is huge value in doing that. There's absolutely no doubt about it. Crunch data, approach the right people. You can get to anybody you want to as a brand and pay them to talk about your brand message. And there is real value in doing that. But if you are doing that, it's really worth calling out, and increasingly as the market demands this, those people who just love your brand and want to talk about it because it's interesting to them, or they have a need for it, or it's something they're curious about, or it's something they already love. And you should be therefore unlocking those people very, very inexpensively, very efficiently, and working with them on an advocacy basis. It's really powerful targeted gifting. And actually what's been fascinating for us is when you run the two together, and we're increasingly working with agencies who are using us more and more, when you run the two together, you end up having that really powerful sort of message purchasing. So we did something with Sainsbury's where they wanted to work with mum bloggers who were gluten-free, and they wanted those mum bloggers to push a specific message. So they went about crunching the data, they went about finding these mum bloggers, they went and contacted them, and they said, look, this is what we're doing, we'd like to pay you, and the mum bloggers came back and said, well, yes, if you want to pay me, it's going to cost you X, Y, Z. And they purchased essentially this media channel from mum bloggers who pushed the specific messaging around this gluten-free brand. And it got them, I think, what they wanted. But at the same time, they came onto the site and they said, if any of you out there are gluten-free, we'd love to hear from you. We've got this really cool new range. We are trying to find people who are gluten-free, tell us your story. And they found an international athlete who came to them and said, you know, I've been gluten-free for 2 years and it's absolutely revolutionized my diet, and my performance levels I've found have gone through the roof. What does that look like to you? Amazing. They said, let's take you and we're going to do an interview with you in our Sainsbury's magazine, which goes out to our database, etc., at the end of the month. We'd love to just talk to you about your story about being gluten-free, and we'd love to sort of include our new range in amongst that story. And they found a Hollyoaks actress who came forward and said, you know, my daughter's gluten-free, and I'm really struggling with her diet. I cannot find anything that solves it. And they sent her a 6-month supply, and they said, look, we just love organically to be woven into the YouTube content that you create. And they found a whole load of social media influencers who came forward and said, you know, I am just really, I am gluten-free. It's something I talk to my audience about anyway. I'd love to try your product. I'll give you really honest feedback about it. And it's something that, you know, I like talking to my audience about. It's something that means something to me. Send me the range, and I'm really happy just to create content around it. So what you end up with, as I say, is this very specific messaging at the top, which you purchase. And it's, in my view, it's quite dry, but you're getting your specific brand message out there. And by using the influence, I mean, you just unlock the people who are really interested in what it is you're offering, and they give you that way of amplifying your message, seeding it to people that want it, and therefore getting a layer of advocacy, which makes the two really, really powerful together. It's a little bit softer. You don't necessarily control the message so much, but you're getting your product or your campaign or your experience into the hands of people who really, really want it. So the benefit for people like James and the benefit for people like Rachael, and you're not there yet, and you've still got a long time to go in terms of your playing career, is that when they leave the sporting arena, and we often hear players talking about when the cheering stops, you know, what do? There is so much IP amongst, you know, top flight sports people who actually are able to use that to talk to brands. So Rob is another member of ours, and he is on the site using Workathlete as the incentive and the exchange that he is working with brands on. So he is talking to them about, can I, in return for potentially coming to stay at a hotel, actually do a couple of hours with your management team, and I can give you some of the insights that I use from my Workathlete. And we've got 2 minutes left, so I better crack on. But in terms of what we built, as I say, it's a very discreet site. There is, the brand can see what any other brand is doing, no influencer can see what any other influencer is doing. It's a very, very private space where good brands and good people can have really good conversations. It's a really exciting, we're actually fundraising at the moment, and something I've sort of been talking to Paul about over the last few months. We're sort of getting to the point now where we're trying to scale it. We're starting to be pulled into Germany by some of our brands. We're starting to have a lot of applications from America, etc. So it's increasingly relevant, I think, that this layer of advocacy and the authentic connections that brands are searching for is something that we have been doing for a couple of years, very quietly, very, as I say, sort of under the radar, behind the scenes. But now it's the time for us to really go for it. So hopefully it's of interest. Thank you very much indeed for the charity vote. Thank you for listening. One more big laugh, just so that we've had more fun than they have. Thank you very much indeed, Dream Team. Have you got any questions in the last 30 seconds? Anything interesting? Yes. We charge the brands to post to the browse wall. So instead of you having someone crunching data for 2 days, trying to find people who then you reach out to, they're not interested, they want to be paid more than you do, you just stick up a notice. Influencers come to you and say, I really want to be a part of that, and you take as many of those influencers as you want. And they are your connection. Which seminar had the clapping? Was that Rob's? Yeah, he always gets in the way. Always makes it sound like he's having more fun than everyone else, and he's not. We're going to have more fun now, though, because we're going to move on to our panel discussion. You've got Blue Steel on the left, you've got Criminal Convict in the middle, and the wonderful Rachel Burford on the right. Will you give a huge round of applause for James Haskell and Rachel Burford? Come on up. Welcome, welcome. Well, are you having fun? What have you learnt this evening?
That you're actually quite funny.
Oh. Hask's writing my scripts. Oh, is that you, James? Tech problems. There's an irony.
What am I reflecting off?
I don't know. I don't know.
Magnetic personality.
Your very large moon boot. How is the hoof? How is the hoof?
So how good's that photo? I look very angry.
You do,
Like
yeah.
I break into your house and rob your technology.
Yes, which would be ironic. How are you? You've always had quite a big week. Before we get into the tech side of things, you've had a lot of love, haven't you?
Yeah,
How is life off the back of retirement?
Everyone's been very nice here today, so thank you very much for that. Obviously, people keep referring to me as a retired rugby player. I've still technically got to turn up to train at the Saints, so they're not regarding me as retired.
You're doing more corporate breakfasts than the training, though, aren't you? You're entertaining the sponsors, I think.
Yeah. I was doing that while I was playing, so it's kind of it's okay. Obviously, great way to spend a Wednesday evening. Was it Wednesday evening? What day is it today? Wednesday evening.
Yep.
In London. Obviously, talking to you lovely people, all about technology. It's obviously something that I'm extremely passionate about.
Not just in sport as well.
Yeah, I'm actually one of my biggest kind of hobbies, and we do a podcast, Alex and I, called The House of Rugby, and we talk a lot about nauseas. So nauseas are people, shock horror, quite nauseating about certain topics.
I like the way that Capgemini have rebranded them as super fans, and I think I'm moving from Norse to super fan off the back of this, I think.
Spotters, brackets losers. But you know what I'm saying? So we talk about nauseas, like rugby nauseas, but I'm actually a full technology nose. I spend majority of my income on technology, from every area, from cameras, drones, smartwatch, smart tech, anything. I once, my students purchased, I once bought a pair of night vision goggles. I thought I was going to use them all the time, and then obviously I didn't realise that they were different generations. Obviously, and I think it was like second gen, which you'd be lucky to see anything in the dark with that. And obviously, when they sat in the cupboard, sort of festering, my now wife was like, "What are these?" I was like, "They're my night vision goggles, dear." She was like, "What are you using them for?" And I was like, "Shooting." She goes, "You haven't been shooting in ages." I was like, "Right, we'll sell them."
Put them in the bin. Quite right. You're both business owners as well, actually, which is very relevant tonight. Do you want to just tell everyone a little bit about Rachel Burford Academy before we get into the sort of the tech?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I run a girls rugby academy during summer holidays, and the idea of that is to encourage more girls to play rugby and to keep them in the game. But it's not just about the rugby. I also do some off-pitch work with them, trying to develop maybe leadership skills or communication skills, and just trying to give them a little bit of what I've been exposed to growing up over the years within my own career, and try and help them out a little bit, because growing up you don't get taught all those types of things or given advice early on. You're kind of thrown into a leadership role, or you're asked to do certain things that maybe you just need a little bit of support. So trying to do that and mix with the rugby as well, because that's the good fun bit as well. So that's kind of started out a couple of years ago and just slowly began to grow.
Do you like tech?
Yeah.
Yeah? Like, yeah, I do.
Yeah. I mean, I should do.
What role does tech play? I mean, outside of the sports environment, what tech are you into? Not as nauseating as him about it, but I mean...
Well, yeah, I haven't got night goggles.
No.
More for you.
Yeah.
I think just like generally that technology, like the way that the phone is involved with, like you have to have it on you at all times. Like the way that I use phone, and I'm still very much not retired yet. So using your phone for our training analysis, having specific apps that we need to use to be able to interact with that is just sort of that day-to-day basics of it.
Ben, who came up a bit earlier, has shut down all the fun from being a sports commentator. I just wonder, as we sort of move into the sports tech, how much tech has changed? You've been around a while. How much tech has changed what it is that you've been through as a player?
Yeah, it's dramatically changed everything in terms of what we do as a player, and not always for the better. I think, and obviously I know we're here to celebrate technology and innovation in sport, and obviously Capgemini do a fantastic job with that. But I think, sometimes you watched it very much on the Dragon's Den, people finding solutions to problems that didn't exist, and then trying to flog their kind of wares. And I think sometimes in sport, technology has played a great part in terms of the GPS tracking element of what we do, in terms of understanding how many kilometers we cover in a training session, how much you cover in a game, and then formulating training around that. However, technology and the data provided is only as good as your ability to understand and utilize the data. And a lot of rugby clubs, you find out Saracens is wearing GPS, so Wasps gets GPS. Wasps get GPS, so Worcester gets GPS. Everyone's got GPS, everyone's got heart rate monitors, everyone's collecting these piles and piles of data. But my biggest criticism is they don't utilize it in a way that should be. I think that, with the GPS, the idea would be that everything should be down to individualization, I believe. You've got to have some team metrics that are really important and will give you an understanding of how much you've run in the week. But you should be using that data to go, right, as a player, I trained and ran 5K every day in a training week. I had the best performance I've had on the weekend where I ran 7K. I had 100 involvements in the game. Those 100 involvements were positive involvements because again, the stats don't tell you everything. They can tell you you've had 100 involvements. You can look like you've had a busy game, but that could have been 100 times I turned up to ruck, after it'd gone. 100 times I dropped the ball, most likely. Whatever it might have been. So understanding that once you've compared that data and gone, do you know what? I ran 5K a week, ran 7K in the game, 100 involvements, positive, and I did that consistently 4 or 5 times, then I know that to get the best out of my body, I should be running that in the week. If I suddenly peak and I'm doing 15K a day and my performance goes down, you should be able to come back and look into that. But I think a lot of teams don't do that, and a lot of teams who are coached by slightly older school people use the data to bash you as opposed to utilize it as a positive way. They'll turn around and say, every time we give you a day off, you come back in and underperform and lose that weekend. If we give you too many days off, you underperform. I've had that thrown to us a few times. You're actually under-training. Boys are coming in knackered because the sessions are going on for 2 hours, whatever it might be, and they're coming in saying, we're actually running less than you've done before, so you're underperforming. And I think that's where it's really important that we utilize this technology in a really important way. We don't just create it for the sake of it. But certainly in rugby, there has been so many benefits, even from the basics of hydration testing. I run a health and fitness business amongst other things, and I believe in the importance of fit tech. Consumers want data to be able to compare with each other. So, I ran this, you ran that. Oh, really? I've got a nice little map of me running around a park, and that I think it's that Strava app or whatever it is. Where for the one for bicycles, everyone's racing through red lights to get the record on those things, and tie themselves to a bus to beat every record. I think those things are useful. But again, I walk 10,000 steps. I've burnt 30,000 fuel things. What does that mean? You got to understand what that equates to, how it works, the inaccuracies of it. But I think to understand a basic picture, so I'm on a bit of a body transformation thing at the moment. I don't want to be one of those fat old rugby players. Apologise if there's any in the room, but it's not really my vibe. I don't think I'd pull it off very well. So I'm at the moment trying to get as lean as possible. Summer's coming. Got a few DJ gigs in Ibiza, so don't want to.
Did they see you hanging around the food?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Summer's coming, but it's not here yet.
Yeah, but it's funny Rachel says that. So I use MyFitnessPal. Big believer again. Another bit of technology that kind of I've almost used technology in a 360 kind of approach to every area of my life, and when it's permeated in the big time, is using MyFitnessPal to track everything. And I've honestly just smashed a load of stuffed jalapenos and those fried chicken goujons, and it's destroyed my fats. Right, which is not too bad because the app, I've gone over like 40 grams today. I'm still under my calories, unbelievably. But my wife, when she looks at it, she controls a lot of my nutrition. There's going to be a lot of tutting, a lot of you've got to take more responsibility. So again, tech doesn't always have its great purpose.
Quinoa for breakfast for the rest of the month.
Yeah, but that is the interesting thing. Again, I know we're not here about nutrition, but a lot of people get obsessed with they blow their calories. You come to a work event, free beer. Who doesn't like free beer? And you go over the top. It's actually your weekly calorie intake, which is important, not your daily. So I'm going to probably by the end of today we'll go over, but it means I'll start in a deficit tomorrow, so I can make some better decisions tomorrow. So possibly quinoa, no stuffed jalapenos, and especially with the judging woman over here, Rachel's around, tutting, a lot of tutting. I see you.
Quite right.
Chloe messaged me to keep an eye on it.
Favourite bit of tech in sport, and the bit of tech you like the least?
Probably one of my favourites is probably we've got a wellness app
which basically monitors you daily on all types of things. So your nutrition, what your heart rate is, your hydration, also like just monitoring what your sleep was like, how many hours did you get, and it basically can accumulate and give you a record of where you are in terms of being ready to perform, and how you can, and then it will give you an opportunity to work out what you need to do in order to be ready to perform if you're not, for example. That's probably one of my go-to apps, but there's also another app that I'm really interested about, and it's a topic that is not spoken about enough, and it's called Fit Our Woman, and it's about tracking menstrual cycles, because it plays such an important role within a female athlete that there's still so much that's not touched on. And within this app here, it tells you exactly what phase you're in, exactly what nutrition. So James talking about GPS and about how you can have all these, you ran this amount and you did this, you did that, and what does that actually mean? Well, the same with a menstrual cycle. Actually, you're in different phases. So actually, there's certain things you should be doing and certain things you shouldn't be doing at certain times. But that's never spoken about in a sporting context. So there might be a week where I need to change my training and my nutrition to get what I need at the weekend. And vice versa, there might be other times where I need more recovery, less training to then also perform. And I think that's a massive area that is really, really untapped at the moment.
Is that something that you've used partway through your career? And what has the difference been without using it and now using it? I mean, are you now far more consistent in your performance as a result?
I think it's just awareness and knowing and not like living in the stereotypes of it all, and actually being aware, because there are risks when you are in your cycle. So we've always talked about that side of things in sport, but not necessarily all the other things that if you understand all the benefits and what it could do to you in terms of your performance. I've only been using it, but I've only found out about it about 3 months. And, I think I find this, I know this is a room full of men, but mostly men.
We're all nodding, knowing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, this is something that affects women for a lifetime. And just to only now be recognising certain things and understanding it to the depth of what this app provides is brilliant.
Of all the people, all the coaches that you've played with, who loves the tech the most?
Just be our nosy analysts.
Super
fans, yes, analysts. Yeah, those guys, they just literally will go to heavens and earth to provide as much data as they can on opposition, on you. I mean, if you sit in a room with one of them I can't sit in a room with them for that long, but if you try and sit down, they come up with the most incredible things and the data, and obviously we've seen, the work that they're doing here in terms of recognising what's happening in play, real lifetime things happening. To know that is just so critical for a player to know about your opposition and also to know about you. And I remember working with one analyst, Dave Gardner, who's moved on now from England Rugby, but he was able to literally tell you so many small details about the opposition, which actually allowed you to be able to play your game a lot better around that. And I think there's a lot of players out there that don't actually understand about how hard and how much you can get from just sitting down and working with an analyst or a super fan.
You've played all around the world: England, France, Japan, New Zealand, Lions, England. Which coach uses it the best, tech, and which coach is least interested / uses it the worst? We're off the record tonight. I know you're retired.
We're live streaming, Alex. That's
forgot about that. Sorry.
Great use of technology there, Alex. Yeah.
Tech catches you out.
Yeah. Trying to make me drop the ball, I see. Not for the first time. One thing I just wanted to cover off, talk about the health app, right? So back in the day, and I have been around quite a while, I used to have to fill in every morning a form. So you weighed in, and you used to weigh in, and you write the weight down, and then you would write out of 5, 5 being, terrible, 1 being, fantastic, how you felt, how you slept, where you were ready to train, how sore you were, and everything else. And ordinarily, you wake up, you spend yourself perpetually sore as a rugby player, but I was ill once, so I put a 5 down for health and a 5 down for something else. No one read it, so I didn't want to say anything, so I just trained. And the next time it happened, same thing. Right, and then obviously that moved on. I thought, well, this is a pointless system because no one's using the data. I was like, well, what, you could literally write whatever you want. And then when things moved on, we had a New England coach, a guy called John Wells came in, and I remember him. I wrote 5 again. I was ill. I sound very sickly, but this is over 17 and a half years. and I put down a 5. And he came up to me and was like, James, I've seen you put a 5 down. If you don't want to be here, you can leave. And I was like, but I'm ill. I'm ill. And he's like, no, it's not good enough. Get out. You're going to go train. If it's the World Cup final tomorrow, you'll be training. I was like, but it's not the World Cup final. Get out. So then I really gave up on the whole health thing. I thought, this is just pointless. It doesn't matter what I say. We've got to train. So, yeah, it was a bit of a nightmare. But I think it's an interesting one because I think... I still think in rugby, a lot of times we perceive it to be very professional. We talk about it as a very professional sport. We've talked about it on our podcast. Actually, I don't think it is quite as professional yet, and I don't think the use of data is quite there. I think actually, really interestingly, we use a program called Sports Code a lot to analyse what we're doing. I think it's really interesting the stuff that Johan and his team's put together to speed up that process because it's sent to some super fans who will individually edit this. They farm out to students, Opta do the same thing. They create these videos, they cut them into different pieces. I think actually being able to do stuff in real time, I think we're really clever. So you could be onto a big contract if you want to sell that to Sports Code. I'm not involved with Sports Code, but I will take 1% for the idea. I think Eddie Jones uses technology. He was another one that when we had the wellness thing in, he came in and he was like, mate, what do you think of the wellness thing? And I said, well, no one looks at Eddie. Because we're filling it in this app. You could literally put anything. Like my spine is broken, and no one would pay any attention. And I remember I told him that, and I'd put myself down a sore. Next day, the doctor came in, obviously having got absolutely blasted, going half day for you. And I was like, no, I actually want to train. He was like, no, half day. Eddie's spoken to me, and Eddie was looking at everything the whole time. He realised this data had been there, wasn't being used, and started to use it properly. So that was, I think he of all of them is really into innovation and wants to see how it works.
What about in-game?
Oh, I tell you, I had an interesting experience with in-game technology. So obviously, again, we wear the GPS vest. We wear heart rate monitors. So again, they used to equate fitness testing. So 1 was kind of walking around. 2 was you were having a minor effect. 3 to 5. You were having a dramatic effect on your fitness, 3 or 4. I never saw. Only person I ever got to see to 5 was a player called Ronnie Regan, who got to 5, but he was overweight and he got it just going up the stairs. So now 5 is like your heart rate's like going to explode. Like it was quite aggressive. So you used to wear these heart rates. You used to have this GPS on, and what they would do is under an England coach, they had a big screen, one of those big Apple screens. Other ones are available, and it would have each player. Right, on the screen, and any time that they made a mistake, did anything, it would flash up red, a number, very much like what Johan's invented there, like different things. And honestly, I was watching the coaching, and I used to sit with the coaching staff. I didn't like sitting in the normal stand bit. I was like watching the game, really interested. And honestly, every time a player made a mistake, they were like, get him off, that's not good enough. And I left after about 20 minutes, like, this is cutthroat. Because they were basing everything on that. This guy's getting tired, he's done that, that's 3 mistakes in a row, we're taking him off. That was in that certain period of time. And I don't think that happens now. But I think certainly they're all wired up, so they would be talking to it, and maybe the analysis guys would say, listen, he's missed 5 tackles, he's not looking good, he's slow behind the pace, we've got hammered in 3 scrums, 1 more penalty, he's going to yellow card, maybe they'll take him off. But certainly that one with that particular England coach was horrific. It was, they were literally waiting for mistakes, and they flashed up with big red numbers, and I had to walk away. I was like, this is just too intense for me.
I think on that question is that when it's used right, they take it into context. So instead of just looking at the numbers and basing it on that, it's based on their experience, what they can visually see. And also, players are pretty responsive now in terms of feedback as well. So I think it's a mixture of the two of the coaches that use it really well.
What about the future? What would you like that you don't have? Or was that a stupid question to ask someone who's potentially trying to crack the system? I just remember Will Greenwood telling a story when they first put GPS into the shirts and they were tracking it. Whenever the opposition would kick for goal, he'd sprint in the dead ball area to get his numbers up. And then Woodward was like, what a great game he's having. He was just doing lengths up and down the thing, boost his targets.
We've all been there. I put it on a dog. Bought me a couple of extra years, to be honest with you.
Is there anything in the game that you don't have that you wish you did?
I think for the women's game, we're still quite behind, and we've still got a long way to go. More sort of data to be coming in. So it was only 2 years ago that I came back from a shoulder injury, and I had to have one of the players on the bench counting my number of contacts, because we just don't have that yet, all that data and all that information to be able to pull from and be able to use all the great technology that's out there. It's not yet accessible yet.
Is it coming? Are you seeing more of it in the game?
Yeah, it's definitely coming on loads more. Like our analysis is definitely, we use sports codes, so we're very in depth with that. But I think there's still lots of things, you know, just talking about the numbers and looking at the heart rates. Like, we don't wear heart rate monitors, so we're just using the GPS units. So I think there's lots of different things that we need to capitalise on, and we need the opportunity to bring that into that game. And whether that's a financial area that's the issue, or whether it's accessibility, I'm not sure. But we definitely need to be able to try and raise our game in terms of how much tech is actually involved.
You need Johan's business card. Where are you, Johan? Let's send that up to the front. We'll have you starting tonight. There, exactly. Pass it forward. Where do you think the game goes in terms of the battle between data and the sort of purity of what super fans see on the
I think what needs to happen is the thing with rugby is that it normally employs from within. So there's a lot of jobs for the boys situations where you've got guys who've done things for a long time, and a lot of businesses, a lot of people do things out of fear. We've always done it, so we've got to do it. You have to beat someone up on a Tuesday in a training session because you won't do it on a weekend if you don't. Well, that's nothing to do with performance. You can tackle someone every day on a Tuesday and still play terrible. It's down to the mental side, where that analysis isn't coming. So I think for me, the biggest improvements I think that could be made to players is in the recovery sector of the game. I think obviously the real-time tracking is important, the heart rate monitor tracking, the improvements within that, but actually the recovery side of it. Players. Obviously, you've seen the advent of CBD oil at the moment. How everything's got CBD oil in now. Even this microphone's got CBD oil in it. Everything you're doing is kind of but rugby players particularly, ears pick up. Oh, it helps with anti-inflammatory, helps with your body. Every rugby player you'll meet, male or female, is battered or sore most of the time, and they don't fully comprehend nutrition. That's a massive area. They don't fully comprehend sleep, the importance of sleep. I don't think most members of the public actually understand the importance of sleep, the different types of sleep, how it can affect you, how it can stop so many onset of diseases. And I think technology with the wearable tech would make a massive difference to that. Being able to wake up, check your blood. I was talking to someone, they've actually got some patches now that permeate the skin that you wear that do your blood sugar. I tried to get some actually just out purely for interest, but they wouldn't. Just to see what it's like, because obviously how your body deals with carbohydrates, sleep. You get wearable sleep tech, but how accurate is it? Being able to test your bloods consistently and go, you've got a load of stress markers in your body, probably not a good idea for you to train. Because I think in rugby we overtrain. I think we under rest. I think we undersleep. The nutrition isn't nailed for a lot of players. And if you can create some technology around those areas to maximise that in any sport, especially normally the NFL, they'll pioneer it first and foremost, because if you think of it, you've got a commodity that's on a 5-year deal for 100 million. If that breaks down, that's costing people big money. It obviously filters down. It's all relative. In rugby, no one's anywhere near that. Do you know what I mean? So I think hopefully it will permeate down and make a big difference. But that's what I would look into.
I was going to just very quickly add two things from a sort of sports broadcasting point of view as well. I'd be interested in your view on this. So the two big developments that we've had at Sky, which I think were really interesting. So we're obviously always trying to sort of better the viewing experience. The first was wearing microphones on players. And I don't know if any of you follow the NRL, but we got the idea from an amazing video that Fox did with a guy called Jonathan Thurston, who's one of the greatest league players of all time. And they mic'd him up in game, and it's absolutely brilliant. We're always trying to take sort of the fans further into the game where possible. And we ran it in... I think we ran it in an England Barbars game. Most of the Barbars players were drunk, actually, so most of it was unusable because there was a lot of swearing. But that is something that I think is fascinating for a fan, is the ability to get right in there. And the second thing, I don't think it's actually been used yet, but I saw a company that is wearable tech, and it measures velocity. And so you are going to be able to, as a boxer, you'll put chips in your gloves, and when you land the knockout punch, you'll be able to measure the G-force of it. And when you get Marrow smashing into Billy or whatever it is, and that obviously wouldn't be happening, but whatever, you will be able to measure the velocity. And I think that'll be a fascinating sort of insight as to just what these collisions feel like. I just wonder, obviously having played the sport that you played, what you make of how it's portrayed on screen and the tech that, I suppose, and the gadgets that we are using to tell the story. I know you scoff a lot of the time that what people see isn't what actually goes on, but Rachel, is rugby fairly represented on screen?
I think relatively, yes. I think you have good people who are in those roles knowing what they're talking about, which gives it the first and foremost insight. But I think, I haven't been in that commentary box where I can see that you get all this data and you get the stats and everything, which is really appealing to sports fans who are listening and having an insight. But there is still, there's a lot that goes on where things are said when you're, as a player, you're kind of like, no, that's not right, or no, that's not what he meant to do, or not what she meant to do. So I think it is quite fascinating, and having the mics on, we do it in training at times, and we do it a lot with like our younger players coming through, just to actually see, are they talking, why they aren't, or in the right position. So a way to accelerate their learning as opposed to for broadcasting. But yeah, it's a different way that we've used it.
You were telling a story about somebody who was interviewed through a wall yesterday.
Oh yeah, well there's two things. We wear the microphones in training, or the lads do. And obviously, one of the benefits of being a professional rugby player is that you have a right to be. You can be negative. We like to call it sappuccino, having a little sap. Because if you work hard and train hard, you can moan. It's part of the thing. And if you don't work hard, don't train, then you can't moan. Then you're just a negative Payne. But the issue with that is that we were sapping along and like obviously mugging people off. And I'll walk over to one of the players and they'll be like this. Mic'd up. I'm like, what? Mic'd up. And I'm like, oh my God, what have I said? What have I said? So quickly go into the analysis room, like delete that, like take that off. Because honestly, there's been a few of occasions I've sidled up going, oh dear, he does not know what he's talking about. He's talking, and the bloke's like, run off in the other direction. I'm like, wait, Owen, come back. And he's run off. But no,
Jason Bourne,
yeah. Honestly, getting in there, getting like one of the keynotes by the throat. Like, delete it. I can't. Eddie needs it. Delete it. No, but we were saying about the communication element was that we had. Can't do that in business. You get HR departments. I don't have that, so it's not a problem. Or maybe I do now. Actually, now I've left. Now I'm one of the people who can't do that to normal people anymore. No, we were talking about last night. There was a guy called Dean Richards, who's a very famous coach of played for England, fantastic player, and he was always trying to talk about innovation. And this is the state of rugby. That a player wasn't a very well. First of all, a player kept taking his shirt off during pre-season, hot weather, running up and down with his shirt off. So he was called in for one-on-one. And when the player came in, Dean Richards was reading the Times, covering himself from behind his desk. When the player came and sat down, Dean put his newspaper down and he had his top completely off and was like, you like training with your shirt off? I thought we'd do the meeting with my shirt off. I hope that's okay. But that was swiftly followed by one player wasn't very good at communicating, so they had a one-on-one, but they made him stand in another room and shout the answers through the wall because he wasn't loud enough. So that, for me, is the technology of rugby. That's where we're at with that.
It's a thing of beauty. I've had that out of time sign, so we'll have a massive round of applause for Hask and for Rachael. Thank you very much indeed. Are we having a pause? We're doing this seamlessly. It's sort of elevator music while we whip in 2, 3 more stools. And we will welcome up 2 more stools. I'll stand. Could we please welcome up? We'll have a round of applause as we do it. Amy Wilson-Hardy, who's a current England Sevens player. Where are you, Amy? Come on up. From the back, she wants the long round of applause. Amy Wilson-Hardy, ladies and gentlemen. We've got Rebecca Hopkins.
I'm very close.
Rebecca, come and join us, who is the CEO of the Sports Technology Awards. A round of applause for Rebecca as well.
Woman, yeah.
And where is Rob Vickerman, who's coming in off the he's coming off the side run up, left arm over. Rob Vickerman, ladies and gentlemen, come and have a chat. Here's a funny story. I did work experience with Rebecca a few years ago. It's nice to be sort of sitting alongside you rather than making your tea and coffee. I wasn't very good at the tea and coffee. A lot of people would say I should probably still be making it, but very nice to see you all. Do you want to quickly just introduce a little bit about what it is that you're doing at the Sport Technology Awards?
I'm Rebecca Hopkins. I'm the CEO of the Sports Technology Awards Group, or STA Group. We own a number of properties, but essentially we are a comms and events agency that specialises in sport tech. We've been working in sport for 17 years, and 6 years ago we identified a gap in the market whereby the single biggest force changing sport was technology, and nobody was really doing anything to formally celebrate it. And one of the things I think that you see whenever you've worked in sport for more than about 10 minutes, there's a huge amount of snake oil sold. It's that whole, because sport is so much about hope, it's so much about competition and all those kind of things, anything that will buy you those marginal gains of success is something that people in sport embrace massively. And as I said, there's some fantastic stuff out there, and at the time there was a lot that wasn't. So part of the inspiration for doing the awards was really just to sift through and find and celebrate the brilliant, and maybe sort of look away from the less good.
Interesting. Very good. I'm sure we'll have some entrants tonight. When are the next awards?
They were 2 weeks
Oh, right. So you've got another 50-odd weeks to wait, but do get your entrance in. You've just come back from Canada, Amy, is that right? Tell us what you've been doing, how it's all going, and have you got anything to add to the insights of Rachael and James alongside, just about where tech sits in the squad at the moment?
Yeah, I've just come with, well, it's the World Series that kind of runs all year, no rest for the wicked. Just come back from Canada, previously Japan, so really hard life, travelling the world, playing sevens, running around in the sunshine.
Wait till Ben gets hold of you. You'll be doing it all from your basement, sadly. But
I don't like the sound of that interactive at-home rugby. Yeah, so kind of it's really similar. I think GPS for sevens players is kind of nowhere to hide, which is not always a good thing. But everything, you can't, if you're not working hard, you can't pretend to be. So I think that's one of the main things. But also alluding to that comms thing, it's been a massive development area for our squad of young players, of people not talking. So we definitely use the mics to and pair it up with the kind of technology of the video camera, so we can see alongside that they're not just talking rubbish, they're actually talking what they're seeing in front of them, to then make sure that the younger players are having a voice, give them confidence that they're making the right decisions, and it's massively improved a younger squad's performance throughout the year just by getting those young voices to speak up.
tech working, good to hear it. We're very much opening up to the floor, so we've got a chance. I think we've got about 20 minutes, is that right? 20, 25 minutes? If any of you have got any questions, we'd love to hear them. We've got obviously some very esteemed guests. I can happily witter away if none of you would like to. But if you'd like to stick a hand up, oh, there we've got some keen, eager beavers. Thank you. Let's come to you. Shout it out and I'll pass it on. Yes, sir, to you first of all.
So this is going to sound a bit naysay.
Okay, good.
So I love technology. I work in technology. But just want to talk about maybe the dark side of technology a little bit.
Okay, Haskell, we're coming to you. Yeah.
So I'll give you an example. I'm a scout leader, and I was talking to my scouts on Monday, and we're doing a digital citizen badge. Doing a digital citizen badge, and I said to them that when you're online, you have to be careful. You have to protect yourselves, protect your data, be aware, and when you come across someone, you don't always know whether they're a child or someone else. So what I'm thinking is, technology is great, but what about the side of protecting ourselves, protecting that data that we're gathering? What we do with it, how we secure it, make sure the bad guys don't get it and abuse it. So, naysaying, not really, just positive, I think, but important to talk about.
Okay. I think it's a very good point. I'm not sure that I'm certainly not coming to you because I don't know where you'll go. Do you want to? Oh
I
God.
think you'll find
Hold
them
on,
highly
everybody.
professional.
Hold on tight.
Yeah. No,
Hask wants a view.
I think it's a really interesting point. I think obviously in relation to what we do in sort of performance, we don't have an issue with that in terms of the way we conduct ourselves in the world of social media, which is now being, for most professional sportsmen, there is a sideline of social media to that, and your access and opening the door to people, and I utilise it more than most, but I do it with a very a very business-minded approach to it, because essentially otherwise social media for me, you're inviting a load of people that you wouldn't let through your front door or even come up to you and talk to your street into your life. And I think so much of social media, for example, I've experienced the amazing benefits of it in the last week. I've never had such an outpouring of people being nice. More often not, it's brought the worst things out of people, not just my regard, but in anyone's regard. It's broken down people's barriers, people's comprehension of what's right, what's wrong, how we conduct ourselves, how we actually communicate with each other. And I think, from a rugby player's point of view or a sportsman's point of view, that we have responsibility to obviously, I think, share what we do and share the information, show the positive side of it. But if you don't want to do that, then you just shouldn't be on it. It's all well and good that you might be showing your 5 followers your bowl of soup that you had at lunch, but ultimately, no one cares. And it might make you feel better, but you're probably just better off just sending it to a relative or someone that that actually does probably interested in it, because we define ourselves by likes, we define ourselves by followers, and that's not how life really works. I know for a lot of big brands, it's unfortunately a bit of a dichotomy, because big companies, if you've got 1 million followers, we'll give you some money. We want you to come and do this. So everyone strives to get those, but not everyone can have it. And I think the one thing with technology that people like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube could do so much more. And that, for me, is what disappoints me, is that they have the access, they have the ability to control those things, they have the ability to shut that stuff down. And I think that that anybody who voices any and I know you've got there's a fine line. Some of you will have seen this thing with Israel Folau recently. Some people say it's him professing his beliefs. Other people say it's hate speech. There's areas of grey where you've got to go down to interpretation. But essentially, those platforms, I fundamentally believe, could stop all these suicide sites, all these encouraging women and men to undereat, and all these kind of horrific things that go on, and all these access to these children, all these bits and pieces that go wrong could be shut down, and all this fake news could be instantly stopped. But they don't want to do it because it builds a platform. And I think until they take responsibility, and until we invent some technology which can instantly block and filter it, because a lot of companies I'm sure I've approached other people on the panel about, we've created a safe Twitter, a safe Facebook. We're calling it something else, but everyone's lazy. No one wants to leave these platforms. Until they manage that, I don't think we're going to be in a great place.
Rebecca.
One of the things I'd add on that, social media is one thing. We're very much at the bleeding edge, at the cutting edge of technology in sport. And social media is actually quite dated now. I think what your point, James, actually getting layers of technology, it's all there in terms of safeguarding and that kind of thing. It's just a question of whether people are choosing to switch them off. What I think is far more interesting in terms of the cutting edge technology that we should be seeing. 4 years ago, we started an athlete welfare category within one of the awards that we run, with a view that there was an awful lot of talk about athlete welfare, which is now such a hot topic, but because of the space we inhabit, we're lucky we can pick up on these things quite early. And one of the things that we thought we would see so quickly come through would be technology doing stuff around child protection. Because if you look at the number of super junior kids we have play sport at grassroots level, but also at elite level, and you look at half the US gymnastics team, and they're minors. Yeah, and swimming's another one that seems to have a huge number of super young kids in it. So that was one of the things that we thought would come through. And really, when it comes to athlete welfare, the challenges that it's solving in sport are far more about rehab or health tracking and more that side of things. We haven't even seen a vast amount come through, and I think considering this is a rugby forum, this has staggered us. We haven't seen that much come through for concussion, and governing bodies have got that moral and financial imperative to look after their players, particularly in collision sports. And some of the things that we're seeing come through are amazing, and they genuinely have the capacity to save lives. Something that won 2 weeks ago was a helmet that's incredible in terms of gauging and helping people react to concussion. And governing bodies like tick box solutions, and if anything can provide tick box solutions that's measurable, that's standardised, it's technology. And the point you make, that's an area I personally would love to see technology develop more, because regardless of whichever sport you play, we need it.
I was just going to answer back on the data side of things that Roy asked about, and it's really intriguing because I was sat last year on a panel full of these very high-tech companies, let's just Catapult, Stat Sports, are the people who make the kit that we've just been talking about. And when posed the question, who owns the data, they all looked at each other and they didn't know. They don't know who owns the information that every single player, not necessarily in rugby, but certainly in things like baseball and NBA, the new contracts of players have to be written up, including clauses of who owns that data. Because if you're a player, that might well be a reason for you to accentuate your value, or perhaps medically you might lose your job because of it, yet no one really knows who owns that information, and that's where it gets a little bit grey and potentially dangerous.
Actually, there was a very interesting example in Ireland recently, arguably one of their most high-profile players, who wouldn't release the details of his injury, and no one quite knew why he was playing or wasn't playing.
We had that when we turned up for an England camp once, and they'd the genius doctor at the time had decided to get a portable MRI truck and park it outside Twickenham, and was going to neck and spine scan everybody. And we were like, no, you're not. Because if you scan an MRI scan, 80% of players' necks, backs, there'll be bulging discs, there'll be everything. And that would, could invalidate your contract, could cause you to, what was if they find something? What was if they find something that you didn't even know you had? I mean, there's benefits of it, but that's ending someone's career where they could have got on with it and maybe escaped. So we absolutely said no. We went on strike and said, and that truck got swiftly disappeared away, and we never spoke of it again.
But actually, I think there's such a strong point that's overlooked, and technology can't solve it, is young athletes so often need protecting from themselves. I mean, people talk about a concussion. There's no such thing as a concussion. You play concussed or you're not concussed, and you have a series of them. I mean, you know far more about it than I do. But, you know, how many times have you been told, you know, if you get knocked out, say it's my knee. It's that classic thing. Has anybody seen the Living with the Lions series when Will Green was coming around? It's my knee, and it's like you nearly died on the pitch. So it's, I think that's the thing. It's if the Mental Health Awareness Week or however we choose to promote these causes, if it does one thing, it's making it okay for elite performers to say that they're injured.
I was going to very quickly pick up on the point you make about, obviously you asked the question about sort of safety online, but the mental health element as well. And it's interesting that Instagram are trialling, I can't remember where they're doing it, but they're turning off the ability to see likes. So you don't get that sort of dopamine hit, etc. And I think you can still track it behind the scenes, but you're not judged externally by it. And I just wanted to ask Amy and Rachael, are there players coming through that you play with who suffer at the hands of social media? I mean, we're talking about safety, but I just wonder that mental wellness as well. Is that, Amy, are you sort of looked after by the RFU in terms of social media, how to use it, how to ignore it, when to use it, etc.?
I mean, we get the standard kind of media briefing, but then when it comes to your Instagram accounts, you do kind of what you want within reason with it. And I was going to say that as part of the negatives towards it, because a lot of 15 sides have like a curfew in terms of social media cut-off where they won't, I think we used to have it 3 hours before kick-off or a certain time where nobody would go on their phones. But with the nature of sevens, you're playing 6 games over 2 days, breaks between. There's no, I mean, some teams may have a complete cut-off, we don't. I think you increasingly find with, well, I'm an old girl at 27 now, but you've got girls coming in at like 19 that live and die by their phones and Instagram, and it's interesting to see how that's a distraction. And it's about how many likes they're getting, it's about, oh, who's seen it, and you see like the little conversations that I can look back and laugh at now, but probably I was there a few years ago, and it's all about, oh, who's looking at this picture, is my hair going to look good while I'm playing, it's going to be on TV. And it's amazing how much, I don't think it distracts them as a player, but how much, I don't think they realise how much their lives and that time is governed. Obviously when they go to warm up and play, they're on switch on mode, and that's them being a professional athlete, but that downtime, if they're not careful, I think can be used in a negative way. Equally, if they use it the right way, it could be a good distraction to switch off, but you're definitely getting a lot of self-judgment on this, that kind of, if not thinking what other people are thinking about on their social media platforms.
Do you know players who have suffered at the hands of social media, who have had their performance knocked because what people say online?
Yeah, well, there's quite a famous one within the women's game that we know, where we had a game on YouTube, and obviously on YouTube you can have comments written down, and one of the girls, the whistle had blown, but this girl was still coming towards the player who had the ball in her hand. She just put her hand out to like stop the girl, and she like basically went on the floor. And then the comments underneath this game about this player was things like, I hope you get cancer and die. And think like, you're like, where has this come from? What sort of, where do you feel that the need to do that or the right to do that? And we know that trolling is alive and well. And as soon as, like, if I've ever experienced it, and I've never had a performance point of view, but I think maybe we're in a different spectrum to perhaps you might have some different stories because of how much we are broadcast at the moment. But you do see and hear horror, like, comments about people's performances, and then they just get personal with people, and it definitely has an effect on people, 100% in terms of mental health.
Yeah. One of the stories we hear, because we do quite a bit that crosses over into esports as well, obviously esports is massively dominated by male players, and we were talking to one of the teams recently, and there's a young lass who's an e-gamer who could compete in the males team perfectly easily, but because social media and streaming is such a fundamental part of that athlete's life, she doesn't want to compete with the boys because she said, I couldn't stand the social trolling. She said, I can't, because, you know, she's obviously not that confident about her looks, and she just said, I don't want to put myself forward because I don't get judged on my talent, I get judged on my looks. She said, I don't want that for myself, which is tragic. I mean, at least that's one thing. You see it a little bit in traditional sports, but not to that extent where women aren't coming forward.
Anyway, Johan, there's a challenge for you on Tuesday. 10 minutes, but yeah, another hand went up over here. Did anyone else have another question? He's on his phone, ironically. Yes, I'll come to you.
Sure. I've got a quick question about funding for technology in sport. James, you mentioned earlier that Surrey's get GPS there before Wasps get GPS, but do you think that the introduction of all these new technologies into sport is causing a bit of a rift in terms of teams getting any upper edges, that if they're more funded, and whether that's clubs or whether that's kind of internationally, that I'm sure like in England there's a lot more funding going around than some other parts of the world?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question. Obviously, at the moment, the reason rugby is where it is because all the teams are very evenly matched now. Physically, everyone looks same shape. Backs the same as forwards now. Everyone's as fit. That's why the game has gone into such a physical place because it's all about how do you get from A to B as quickly as you possibly can to get that gain line to be able to play. So in that sense, everyone's trying to look for their advantages. I know Sarries were for example, fielding some technology wall behind your ears to register concussion and how that helped. I think there isn't, to my mind, any kind of out there bit of technology at a team sporting that's not kind of uniform. I think when one of these companies comes across, they pretty much try to sell to everyone, and I think that it probably does put pressure on more budgets, and some people do it. Like a lot of teams now, 2 years ago, didn't have full-time GPS guys. Now every team's got one within reason. Really, you've got your S&C team, which are growing. You've probably got 4 or 5 trainers now in there, and you've got one GPS guy, and he creates the data. And all the teams that I've seen have always got this GPS guy setting up. They've got 2 analysis. So in terms of employment, yeah, I think it is putting a strain on it. I don't know. A lot of rugby clubs lose money. That's the issue with rugby in general and the sustainability. A lot of owners come in. When you've got 20 million, it's nice money, but when you're losing 5 every year, you suddenly, it's 20, then it's 15, then it's 10. Obviously, if some people it becomes a fun hobby. It's the guys that have unlimited resources that don't worry about these things, which affects it. And I think, England as a team is very well funded and has a lot of great, innovation. But again, we had these trousers that used to turn on to warm your legs up. For the 2015 World Cup, but that went well. So, it doesn't really matter.
Backside.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't make it into the awards.
No. You were going to pick up on a fascinating character.
Yeah, well, it's a really interesting story for anyone that doesn't know much about Fiji Sevens, the Olympic gold medal. It's an incredible story, but really, moot point on talking about how much money the RFU has to fund the international teams. And Ben Ryan's the head coach of England, and for his last year we did a whole host of these different types of testing, and one of the big things he talks about in his book, which is a fantastic read for anyone that hasn't seen it, says about the speed gates. So every single month we'd be testing about how our speed would be developed from all the training we've been doing, and you had a 1 metre, 2 metre, 5 metre, 10 metre and 40 metre speed gate that gave you an incredibly accurate score for how fast your acceleration was, your top end speed, everything about the power of every foot placement. And we weren't particularly great as an England Sevens team, and yet Ben then goes to Fiji in his next move, and toward building to the World Cup we'd say, well, one thing we want to look at before we start the Olympic programme is speed testing. He said, what do you do for speed testing? He says, well, we run from this palm tree to that palm tree, and someone says go. And that was the measure. So at no point did that then become conducive to performance, because they won the Olympic gold medal. They absolutely blew everyone away. They had absolutely no technology, but they had this will and belief, and religion plays a big part. And for them, they would be saying very different things than us up here, talking about technology and impact on performance, for sure.
What happens if you combine technology with Fiji?
Yeah. And that's kind of what Ben started getting into. So he looked at nutrition with them, he looked at a little bit of biomechanics, a bit of psychology, believe it or not. You know, it's really started slowly dripping that in there. And as a result, you've got a gold medal on the back of it, I guess. So not a bad accolade, and I think that's where you get the balance right. If you go too heavy tech, you lose that personal development, you lose that understanding and human nature side of it, and then similarly the other way, you lose out on a potential advantage.
I think you've hit the nail on the head, though, in terms of it's a great example with Fiji is that you know, the one thing that we don't look at a lot of in sport is the mental side of it, more so than anything else. I remember, you know, I saw a very interesting documentary talking about Jesse Owens when he ran, you know, his 100-meter world record on an ash-based track in you know, green flash plimsolls or whatever it was, versus Usain Bolt on a specialist-laid track wearing, you know, a custom-made thing with all the training techniques. And actually, they extrapolated that if Jesse Owens had worn the similar kind of equipment on a similar kind of surface, a similar kind of day, he would have been one stride length behind Usain Bolt. But the principle was that as technology, we are kind of, especially in sport, we are almost pushing, I want to say the glass ceiling because someone might invent something, but ultimately it still involves humans to execute a job. One of our biggest defining factors is our brain, is our emotions, and so much is players will track their food, players will hydrate, players will wear the tights. You talked about the snake oil technology. I pretty much tried everything there is out there. Like, I'm one of those guys that could pick up the phone and go, fix your toe. I'm like, brilliant. I was wearing something that was designed for horses, which was odd because my toe didn't get fixed, but my teeth grew, which was I don't understand. And I had a passion for sugar lumps, which is bizarre. But no, genuinely, I did. It's called equine arc. It came with instructions. Genuinely, came with instructions that said once you wear it, the horse must wear it and then be taken out to the stables and fed straw. I had to double check that I wasn't meant to be eating straw. But I think, you know, the psychological side of rugby and sport is massively undervalued. And that is, for me, I know we're here to talk about technology, but the next thing that will unlock far more potential, far more ability, because actually exactly what Rob says, that you know, Fiji have nothing. You know, we've luckily had Ben Ryan on our show a few times, and, you know, it was unbelievably emotional to hear, yet they do things individually as sports people that we over here can only dream of. And that's not because of technology. So I think that's a really interesting point. And maybe if you can combine technology and psychology, you know, maybe you're onto a winner.
The Headspace app, haven't they? Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
Which I think is an area that is slowly starting to come into in terms of the world of rugby. But that's just general health, isn't it? It's not just in our game. It's everybody kind of understanding their emotions and being able to deal with them as in, you know, when situations arise, and coping strategies and everything like that as well.
Interesting. Yes, so you had a question earlier on. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so my question kind of carries on from what you guys are talking about rugby players' mental health. And what I worry about a little bit is about how technology and analysis is going to help rugby players in terms of their mental health, right? All the best rugby players you've ever met, they're all down. They remember the bits they've done badly, not the bits they've done well. And I think that's key. So if you've got all this analysis, all this data, what you're doing, what you're not doing well, my question to the panel is, do you think that's going to help you, or do you think that's going to hinder you?
Interesting. Rachel, do you want to take that?
Yeah, just about understood him.
The question, not him, the question.
I think I'm going to answer it.
Ask it in 5 words. Shout it out again. What's the question?
The question is, do you think that the analysis of your play,
Yeah.
what you're doing on the game and on the pitch, is actually going to help you in terms of your mental health?
Okay.
You're already
Yeah.
forward and trying to win the game, super, you're probably fairly constricted in terms of how you feel.
Yeah, I think.
Not sure it was any better second time round, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, no, I think again it comes to that balance, doesn't it? Like, and it can be used as really impactful and really supportive to your performance to take you to the next level. But then I think again we talked about earlier about taking it into the right sort of context about what's happening, and having that human element side of it. Like, I will not have a coach come in and get into me like really aggressively at half time because they know that that's not going to get the best out of me. So I think, yes, it's there to use as a tool to encourage you and make you better and keep adding on those 1%. But I've not had or ever had that used against me or in such a negative way that it's then affected my mental health. I mean, the other panellists might have a different opinion on that.
I think it was like James said earlier, it's linking it with your coach, because I think all of us here we'd know exactly what we've done wrong straight away. You can tell us. One of our skills is to be able to get over that quickly, because we've either got another 5 games to play or we've got another 79 minutes to play. It's going to be mistakes made, so I think we're good at beating ourselves up, but we're good at also going ahead. But then it's getting the finer details and the information you can get about really small little things through help with your coaches that are also watching, or your teammates. You can go over a bit and be like, look, I think I should have done this there, what do you think? Should I have run a different line? And those things are really invaluable, because on the pitch you won't know exactly where the space was necessarily that you didn't run into, but by looking at it afterwards or by hearing comms from a microphone afterwards, that's really helpful for them moving on and improving.
Wasn't there a member of the Lions tour in 2017 who had quite a rough time in an analysis session post first test?
Yeah, well, there was a few rough times on that tour after that first test. I just think it's, again, it came, I talked about people in rugby employing from within. Very interestingly, a lot of coaches don't get taught to be coaches. They don't get told how to interact with people as captains on the field. You don't necessarily know how to communicate with people. Like, my big bugbear is that you're a real key decision, and some bloke comes running into a huddle out of breath, shouting. Because for him, that's what works, that last motivation. But there's actually no emotional intelligence. There's no clarity on that delivery. There's no understanding of the situation. And I know in the corporate world, you go on leadership courses, you get taught how to deliver. And I think it's very interesting what you were saying, Amy, about the younger players. You're helping them develop their communication skills. Because actually, what we're maybe missing at Saints sometimes is just the ability to know when to up the level of intensity, because we were talking about it this morning. I've never been at a team where they want to ramp up the physicality straight away. Some teams you have to actively shout at them to get them to do it. Saints are so committed to what they do, they go from 0 to 60 straight away. But actually it's the clarity 5 minutes to go before the end of the game to understand how to communicate. So I think it's the same thing with coaches, exactly what you're saying, the ability to read the player, to read the room. Now sometimes it is highly beneficial to choose someone out. If it's a recurring theme that all the team are doing it, someone's got to wear it sometimes. Someone's got to be a scapegoat for the greater good. Unfortunately, you can't mollycoddle everyone, and unfortunately, we often try to do that. But sometimes you've got to do that. Other times, it's understanding how to say things in a compassionate way, but also give people the tools to improve. And I think that's where delivering data and stuff becomes very important. And actually, there's probably 3 separate areas to it. There's the collection of it, there's the actual figures themselves, and there's the delivery. And if one element's missing, then you end up with a shambles, and it doesn't really make sense. You get data that doesn't compute, and someone's rammed it down your throat, and you don't comprehend it.
What goes on tour stays on tour, obviously. Not answering the question, no.
I genuinely, I'd love to say like an amazing, funny story, but I can't.
Was it not George Cruz who had a terrible time at the hands of the?
I was midweek. I was the midweek veg. I was team bin. They didn't let me in the high level actual Lions change room. I was cleaning the bins out on the back.
You were very good on that tour. Have we got any more? We've got probably, I think, 3 or 4 more minutes.
Actually, I was going to say just one of the things to talk to your point. One of the things that we're seeing come through is things like facial recognition and using that does a player actually need to go and see the team psychologist or whatever. But I think so much of the tech is focused on performance, whether it's getting people back match ready or working harder. From what I understand, and please correct me, is so many mental health issues happen with elite performance when it's long-term injury or at the end of their career, and repurposing some of that tech for mental health development at those points. There are some very exciting things in prospect, but at the moment, quite a lot of the focus is about performance and winning.
What was the one thing, Rebecca, that you saw 2 weeks ago that made your jaw drop?
Oh my goodness, there was a lot.
Okay, pick 2.
It's some of the stuff that people are doing with 5G is amazing.
Really?
And we've obviously spoken quite naturally today about athlete performance. I think there are probably, in broadcast, there's that ongoing battle between the stadium and the sofa and how to engage fans, because more people will watch at home than will actually attend. So that there's a lot of really exciting stuff happening there with 5G and with the broadcasters. And then another thing that's coming through, and it's going to see how this develops, and we're getting a lot of Paralympic athletes talk about this, is the point at which are Paralympians going to become that man meets machine, whereas the regular Olympics is very much about human endeavour, and your story about Jesse Owens was fascinating. But actually there's a Kiwi, I'll be super quick, I promise. There's a Kiwi lad, and he actually is backing himself to run faster than Usain Bolt. He's the current sprint Olympic champion. Liam Malone, thank you.
Got to be a Kiwi, isn't he, if you know his name? Yeah.
He's an investor.
Yeah, there we go. But he actually reckons that he's not many months away from outpacing Usain Bolt thanks to being a Blade Runner. And so I think that's a potentially really interesting angle for sport to go, but completely irrelevant to rugby.
Just as a side note, I think 100% we should have a steroid Olympics. Like, we should have
Cut the feed.
No. I tell you what. I'll just explain why. Because it wouldn't it be great if you have the regular Olympics, which we all buy into. You have the Paralympics, where you talk about man versus machine. Then we have the Roid Olympics, where you got to sign a waiver just to see what will happen if they did actually legitimately, like some guy running like under 5 seconds, someone jumps, throws something out of the stadium. But
are you thinking about your after?
I'm thinking about. I'm still listen. I'll grow a foot back, and we could be all over it. Just an idea. I think.
Going green on the start line.
Yeah, but listen, if you look at, talk about Rome and the Colosseum, and they used to have people fighting to the death. We've now got MMA. Everyone loves that kind of stuff. Humans will watch anything. I guarantee. We patented that. The Roid Olympics. People will be dropping dead left, right, and centre, but the records will be unbelievable. The viewing figures. I reckon we commission it now.
Oh, with monkey tennis. Amazing.
I told you. Let's get Capgemini Roid Olympics. I think we can do it.
Yeah, Sky aren't doing much rugby. I'll come and present it, actually.
Yeah.
A great thing. What a note on which to... It was going so well until then, but he always has to have the last
Sorry,
one.
it's too good.
Rob, Rebecca, Amy, Rachel, James, thank you so much. A huge round of applause, please, for our superstar guests.
I've been saying to.
Slightly making it up as we go along. Paul, would you like to say a few words just in closing? Paul.
I will, but I'm not going to top that. Thank you, James. Thank you to our guests. Thank you to all of you. I hope you've had a great, fun evening. It's not over yet. There's still some networking. Please stay around, have a chat with everybody, take your photograph with the trophy. Can I ask one thing? It's just popping up on the board, and some of my colleagues are walking around with iPads. We think this has been a fantastic evening, but that's not the point. We want your feedback. Good or bad and constructive. Please, the hashtag is on What's Now London. Please take some time to give us a little bit of feedback. We want to continue in a sporting theme, to continue to drive excellence every year and perform a little bit better each time. So we do welcome your feedback. Please thank our guests again and enjoy your evening. Thank you.
I'll just quickly finally say, when the time comes, have a very safe journey home. Thank you from me. Hopefully it's been interesting, it's been entertaining, lots to take away. By all means, get in touch with anyone who was doing the workshops a little bit earlier on, but hopefully see you back. When's the next one? Next quarter?
There'll be another What's Now over the summer.
See you in the summer. Brilliant. Thank you to all the brilliant team that have put this on. Once again, thanks to our guests. Have a great rest of the evening. Thank you.